For today's movement challenge, we are going to look at your hip rotation. If you do any kind of sports, things like golf, where you use a lot of twisting type movement, then this one's good for you to try. First, what we're going to do is look at your hip rotation in standing. So we're going to get you to stand with your feet hip width apart, toes facing completely forwards, and hands on your hips. Now we're going to try and keep your trunk completely still, so we don't want any twisting through your spine. What we're going to do is hands on your hips, try and twist through your hips as far as you can one way, and then as far as you can the other way. You might find that one direction is a lot stiffer than the other, and then we can do some exercises based off that. But when you do this, when you go to one way, you're moving one hip into what we call internal rotation, your other hip goes into external rotation. So when you go one way, you might feel that one hip versus the other is what's limiting you. So you can see here that I'm stiffer when I twist to one side than the other. And so with this, my hip internal rotation on my right side is stiff. If you look at the far right column, that is called the limb symmetry index, which shows us one side versus the other. And ultimately, we'd like that to be above 90%, which shows that you are fairly symmetrical from side to side. So if you found that your hips were stiff in those standing movements, we're going to do a couple of exercises to help you loosen those up. So the first one, we're just going to do a windmill movement with the hips. So feet a little bit wider than hip width, and you're going to try and drop both knees down to the ground one way and then switch back to the other way. And you're just going back and forth between those movements. And again, for this one, we don't want to have so much movement through your trunk, so you're not twisting through your body or lifting your hips up off the ground, but just one way and then the other way with your knees. If you want to get into a little bit deeper stretch of your hips, we can do what we call a 90-90 position. So for this, we're going to bring one leg out in front of you, knee to 90 degrees, same thing with your back knee. Now, to work on external rotation of your hip, you can face your body over your front knee. And if you can sit up straight here, you can work on keeping your back flat and bending over that knee until you start to feel a stretch in your hip. If you felt that when you twisted, your opposite hip was tight or your internal rotation, in the same position, you can try and twist towards your back foot and try and touch your bum to the floor here to move your back hip into more of an internal rotation and give that a stretch.